I'm going to tell you something that sounds impossible. Not unbelievable, impossible. 2 months ago, I checked into a roadside motel off Route 19. I paid cash. I was exhausted. I just wanted a bed and a door that locked. They gave me a key to room 6. Only, room 6 doesn't exist. By the time you finish this, you'll understand why I don't sleep through the night anymore, and why I keep a mirror covered with a towel. I pulled off the highway because the rain was a white sheet. My GPS had died twice in the last hour, freezing on some back road where the map looked like a snake that forgot how to coil. There were no rest stops left this far out, just a boarded gas station, a church with a dark steeple, and an old sign stabbed into wet grass, Blue Hollow Motel. Half the letters didn't glow. It read B-U-E, Hollow, and in the rain blur, it looked like Hollow had swallowed its own center. Inside the office, the air was warm and smelled like microwaved coffee. A bell on the counter had a little paper triangle taped beside it. Please ring. I did. Nothing. A woman came out from a back room, pale and tired, tying the belt of her robe like she'd been sleeping with the lights on. Her name tag said Marla, and it was pinned crooked, like it didn't want to belong to her blouse. "You want a room?" she asked. Her voice sounded like a match striking, thin and rough at the same time. "Just one night," I said, water sliding off my jacket onto the rubber mat. "Whatever you've got." Marla slid a ledger toward me. Not a computer, a real ledger. The pages were rippled like they'd been wet, then dried under a book. I signed my name where others had pressed their names into the paper with a heavy hand. The most recent signature was 10 days old. The one before that? 1997. I laughed, mostly at my own nerves. "You still do cash?" I asked. She nodded. I set down the bills. Her fingers hovered. Then she glanced over my shoulder at the glass door, at the rain, as if counting the shapes moving behind me in the reflection. "You're passing through." "Job interview." I lied. It was easier than explaining the real reason. My mother's house, the boxes, the will, the way grief makes you drive without noticing where you're going. Marla turned, reached into a wooden cubby, and came back with a brass key on a ring. A tarnished oval fob hung from it, with a hand stamped number 6. The moment it touched my palm, the metal felt colder than anything else in the room. "I didn't know that one was open," she murmured, to herself more than to me. Then louder, "Down the first hall, far end on the right. If the television acts up, smack the side." "I can handle Snow Channel," I said, trying to smile. "You should be fine," she said, smiling back. But something in the skin around her eyes didn't move. The hallway carpet was sticky with years and cleaner. A framed print of a sailboat hung crooked, its glass fogged from humidity that didn't belong to the weather. Room numbers were brass ovals screwed into the doors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a stretch of wall where the paint didn't quite match, like it had been patched and painted again. Past that, at the very end, a door waited under a flickering tube light. The oval plate on it had been gouged, the 6 scratched over so many times the metal shone raw at the edges. The door swung heavy. The smell hit first. Mildew, old carpet, a sourness like a wet towel sealed in a trunk. The room had a bed with a floral comforter that looked like it had seen 100 summers, a dresser with a bolted television, and a nightstand with a rotary phone whose cord dangled loose and cut. I jiggled the phone in my hand. It wasn't attached to anything, I set it down and wiped my palm on my jeans, and dust dumped off the receiver like ash. There was a rug at the foot of the bed, oval and braided, the kind your grandmother makes when she gets bored with being alive. It bunched just slightly in the middle. I nudged it with my foot and felt a soft give. Carpet beneath, and under carpet, something not level. Whatever, I said to nobody, and tossed my backpack onto the chair that leaned away from my touch, like a dog that's been smacked too many times. I shut the door, slid the chain, and turned the deadbolt. The key went on the nightstand. The rain kept up its whisper against the window. I could hear the highway faintly, like the motel remembered what road sounded like. I kicked off my shoes, sank onto the mattress, and the springs cried out like they were glad for the company. The television woke when I touched the power button on the box. My reflection stared back at me on the dark screen for half a breath. Then it filled with snow. The sound was low, a soft hiss, like the ocean made of dust. I thumbed through channels and found 3. A preacher in black and white, staring too close. A shopping channel selling knives that looked impractical even for murder. And a test pattern with a high tone that made my molars ache. I left it on snow. It felt honest. I lay back, let my eyes unfocus on the ceiling. Water stains had bloomed there like bruises, and if you didn't look directly at them, the shapes leaned toward a face. But that's how brains are. We invent faces everywhere. It's better to see a person in a cloud than a cloud in a person you love and miss. I must have drifted. It couldn't have been long. 5 minutes. 10. Because when the phone rang, I still had my jacket on. I sat up fast. My hand went to the nightstand, but the phone there was silent and dead, the cut cord wagging its rubber tongue at me. The ring didn't come from that phone. It came from the bathroom. The door was mostly closed, just a breath of black line along the jamb. The ring happened again, closer, pressed against my eardrum. I stood. "Hello?" I said stupidly to the air, because that's what we do. We argue with sounds. I nudged the bathroom door. It creaked open like an old man trying not to tell a joke. The bathroom had a single light above the mirror. It blinked to life, a yellow coin burning through flies that weren't there. The mirror was cracked in a web from the bottom corner, but clean, too clean. The sink was dry. The tub was dry. The phone sat on the closed toilet lid, its cord intact, coiled twice and plugged neatly into the wall plate. It rang again, but the sound didn't come from that phone either. It came from the mirror. I watched my mouth open in the glass. No sound came out of me, but across the crack, my reflection's lips moved wrong, too slow, a half-second lag. I lifted my hand. The reflection followed. I leaned closer. The crack in the glass lined up with the corner of my mouth. It looked like a cut when I smiled, so I stopped smiling. "Okay," I said, stepping back, palms up to the universe. "Okay." Back in the room, I unplugged the television, left the picture. The static now had a noise under it. Voices, like a crowd chanting in a gym. If I turned my head just slightly, I could almost make out words. I went to the window and pulled the curtains apart. The parking lot was a wet grey square. My car, a soda machine, a dented icebox. Across the lot, dark rooms, all with their curtains drawn like closed eyelids. At the far end, the office glowed. I let the curtains fall and stared at the door. It loomed in plain wood, the chain hooked, the lock set. The brass plate with its scratched number shone like a fresh wound. I must have slept again. The kind of sleep where your brain slips and your body doesn't tell it no. Because the next thing I knew, the lamp was off, the television had gone black, and the dark in the room had thickened enough to have weight. There were footsteps in the hallway, slow, not careful, lazy. Someone who knows you hear them and doesn't especially care. They stopped, right outside my door. The handle didn't turn. It just pressed. The old brass shivered. The chain clicked in its groove, tiny rattles like teeth chattering. I sat still on the bed and listened, counting 10, counting 30, counting to 100, like a child who promises themselves that numbers are a spell. When I finally stood, it was only because I couldn't stand it anymore. I moved barefoot to the door, leaned in, and put my eye to the peephole. What I saw was wrong, not frightening, not yet, just wrong. Peepholes warp things. The barrel makes distances lie. But through that tiny circle of fisheye glass, the hallway seemed inverted. The door across from mine should have been painted green like mine. It was black. The light overhead should have flickered. It was steady. The far end of the hall, that should have met the exit door, ended in a wall, and the face filling the peephole, my face, leaned in from the other side. I gasped and stumbled backward. The chain clacked. Something on the other side clacked, too. A perfect echo. Half a second late. That lag again. That half beat where the world coughs and forgets its place in the measure. I didn't sleep after that. I lay on the bed with the lamp on, and the light woke the moths in my head. All the thoughts they'd been trying to land somewhere started ricocheting. When I finally sat up, my mouth tasted like pennies. The rug at my feet, remember that braided oval, was no longer a little bunched. It had been moved. I could see the border of dust where it had rested, and now it sat an inch to the right, warped like someone heavy had stood on its edge and dragged their heel. I slid it back with my toes. The carpet underneath was a different color, newer, and in its center, a dark, blunt stain, the size of a plate, ringed with the shadow of something that had sat on it for a long time, and then, one day, had not. I turned to the television. I hadn't plugged it in. I pulled the cord from the wall just to be certain. It didn't matter. Snow kept falling on a screen that should have been a dead mirror, and the chant beneath it wasn't chanting anymore. It was a voice. One voice. It said my name. I left the room. Marla looked up when the bell rang. Her robe was gone. She wore a sweater now, the kind knit tight to hold a person in. Her face saw me before she did, if that makes sense. The skin went smaller. The eyes got big. "What room are you in?" she asked, already bracing her hand on the counter. 6, I said, placing the key down. She didn't touch it. "We don't rent that room," she said. "You gave me the key." Her head moved once side to side, a no that didn't belong to any conversation we were having. "No, we don't rent that room." I waited for the rest. The gotcha. You should see your face. It didn't come. "Mom," I said, careful, because sometimes, when a person is balancing on the edge of a strange truth, the wrong word can push them over. "Someone just tried my door. There's a phone ringing in there that isn't plugged in. The television. Built in 2068, she said. Wiring in the walls. Crosstalk happens. It's old here. I've stayed in old," I said. "Old doesn't explain the footsteps." Marla exhaled through her nose, a sound like letting air out of a tire. No one's on that hall tonight. I put a couple in 2. 3 and 4 need work. 5's fine. 6 is. She shut her mouth on the word like it tasted wrong. 6 is patched. Came a voice from the back. A man in a denim shirt stepped out. Silver stubble. Eyes that had learned to look directly at a person and also around them at the same time. His name tag, Gus, hid under his jacket lapel like it didn't want to be read. 6 is a wall now. We bricked it. You bricked a room, I said, smiling, because you can put a smile like a bandage on a fact and hope it makes it less bloody. After, he said. We bricked it after. After what? I asked. The office had a coffee maker on a low table, the kind with a glass pot, baked into permanence by old coffee. Gus poured a cup and handed it to me. The smell was bitter and familiar. You don't want the story, he said. Every time I tell it, it sounds like practice for a lie. I'm not going back there without a reason, I said. Or I'm leaving, and I'll take my money, and I'll never put your name on the internet. Those are your choices. Marla's mouth twitched. Not a smile. An admission. Gus leaned his hip against the desk. 96. Trucker came in. We kept things running then. My pop still had me fixing machines. We were full on the front hall, so we put him in 6. He left his rig across 2 spaces, grumbling about his dispatcher, ate the Swiss roll from the machine, and turned the television on loud enough to show he didn't care about anyone else. He was that kind of tired. Gus took the key on the desk, my key, and rolled it in his palm, but he never took his eyes off me. Next morning, housekeeping can't get in. Housekeeper calls me. I go up with the pass. The chain's on. We talk through the crack at a man who doesn't answer. We get a bar and lift the chain. We go inside. He stopped. He didn't take a dramatic breath. He just pressed his tongue to his teeth as if there was a word there that didn't belong in anyone's mouth. There's nothing in the room, he said finally. Bed, television, chair, all where they should be. Suitcase by the dresser. Air on. Light on. Door locked from inside. Window bolted. And the bathroom door closed. We think he's in there. We knock. We wait. We knock again. We make noise to be kind. Because you never want to surprise a man with his pants down. Then, we open the door. He set the key down, like it had bitten him. There was no bathroom, he said softly. Cinder block wall. The tub spout came out of it like a mouth where teeth used to be. The mirror was gone. The tile was gone. Just wall. Bare. Grey. New. My mouth found a laugh and threw it up as a cough. You're saying, what? He walked into the wall. I'm saying we never found him, Gus replied. Police searched. Never proved a thing. Insurance went mad. And that room, people complained after. Smells. Sounds. Water under the carpet where there wasn't any. So we sealed it. Bricked the door. Drywalled the inside. Put a closet on the other side. Left it part of hallway. It's gone. And even after we did, we'd get calls. He gestured to the office phone. From a line we cut. From a room we don't have. Marla's hands had been gripping the counter. One opened enough to turn the ledger toward me. She tapped my name. Look, she said. The page was rippled. The ink bled. My signature shone new. A wetness crept at the edges, like the paper was sweating. "Do you see what's below it?" she asked. Under my name were 2 faded lines, names I couldn't make out, but the dates in the margin, written in a stiff, precise hand, read the 19th of October, 1996, and beneath that, the 19th of October, 1996. Again, the same hand and the same date, as if someone had written the day twice to be certain it existed. Today's date was the 19th of October. The rain hit the office door hard enough to make the bell give a small, offended jingle. "Show me," I said. "Show me the wall." We walked the hall together, me and Gus, past rooms 1 through 5. At the place where the paint didn't match, he stopped and placed his palm on the wall. It was warmer than the air. "It's here," he said, "where it always was." I pressed my ear to the paint. It smelled like dust burning on a heater. Behind it, a hollow hum, not electrical, more like a breath being held forever. "You got a hammer?" I asked. It came out as a joke. It wasn't one. "I'm not knocking down a wall," he said. "That wall's kept us quiet for years." "Then let me in my room," I said. Gus turned his head slowly, like a cat listening to a sound behind a sound. "What room?" I held up the key. He didn't look at it. He didn't want to. That was the moment I knew something had shifted. He stepped back, like I'd swung the key at his eyes. At the end of the hall, where my door had been, the light flickered. On, off, on, strobing the gouged oval plate in my memory. In its place now, paint, smooth, recent, no plate, no door. The chain rattled somewhere, but not here. The sound didn't know where to belong. I started to laugh again because the alternative was falling down. "I slept there," I said. "There was a bed, a phone. There were footsteps." My brain couldn't decide which facts to deploy first. "Rooms feel big when you're tired," Gus said. "You probably walked into a room that isn't there," I snapped. "Does my backpack hallucinate too?" He lifted his chin toward the lot. "You want a refund?" "What I want," I said, holding the key up between us, "is to give this back, and then to not have it in my pocket again. Then leave it on the desk," he said softly, "and don't look back," which is what a person says in a fairy tale right before the woods do. "What woods do?" I nodded, like a reasonable man, and we walked back toward the office. Halfway there, the lights overhead popped and went dark. The only glow left was the weak green emergency exit sign at the end of the hall. The paint at my elbow went cooler. I reached out in the dark and my fingertips touched metal. The brass oval was there, under my hand. The gouges, the raw shine at the edges. The 6. I didn't say anything. I slid the key into a lock I couldn't see. It found home with a scrape I could feel in my teeth. The door swung inward. The smell hit me. The same wet, sealed towel sour. The same old carpet breath. I stepped across the threshold like my foot had been waiting there all along. "Don't," Gus said. His voice came from too far away, like someone calling down a well. I closed the door. The chain slid without my hand. Inside, the lamp burned. The television whispered. The sink drip ticked like a clock that couldn't count. Everything where I had left it, even the oval braided rug, except now it lay perfectly centered, like it had been measured. On the nightstand, the key fob sat, though I still felt the bare ring biting my palm. on the brass, scratched in neat, frantic lines that caught the lamp light like fish scales. Someone had carved, "You never left." My stomach went hollow in a way hunger doesn't explain. I lifted the rug and smelled iron. The stain had grown, a shade blacker now, as if it had absorbed something recent. Around it, dark footprints stepped toward the bed, and then stopped at a point that would put a person's knees at the edge of the mattress if they were leaning over, looking down. I picked up the dead phone by the bed because that's the thing you do when you're wrong and you need to be punished for it. I pressed the cold speaker to my ear. The voice in the snow said my name with a kind of relief and a kind of hunger. "What do you want?" I whispered back. "You." "Me what?" "You. You did it too." The ceiling stain shivered. The face within it turned like a trick of damp. The bathroom door, perfectly closed, gave a tender little push against its frame, like a sleeping person adjusting a shoulder. I walked to it and set my hand on the knob. The cold bit, like a mouthful of pennies. I turned it. Behind the door was not cinder block. It was a bathroom. The sink, the tub, the mirror, cracked, but there. My reflection stared at me with a look I recognized from photographs where my mother stood behind me with her hands on my shoulders. But the lag wasn't a lag anymore. It was a lead. My reflection raised its hand before I did. My reflection tilted its head, smiled a little, stood a little straighter, and then, with a deliberate care that felt like love spoken by the wrong voice, my reflection reached up and wiped its hand across the glass from left to right. The smear traced words into the steam that wasn't there. I know how stories work. This is the part where I say I ran. I did what tired animals do. I froze, shaking so hard my teeth tapped like ice in a glass. "Put what back where?" I asked the mirror, and my reflection laughed. And I heard the laugh from the hallway, and from down by the nightstand, and from inside the television, each one a half second out of time with the others, until they layered and became a new sound that was my voice and not mine at all. I grabbed my backpack and the key, both keys now, the one on the ring and the one on the nightstand, because if I left one, it would show up again like a dog that knows where home lives. I opened the door. The hallway was bright. The brass 6 gleamed. The exit sign smiled its green smile. I walked. I didn't run. Running is a signal to the universe that you know it has teeth. I reached the office and set the keys on the counter. There was no bell this time, no Marla, no Gus. The ledger lay open, and the pages were white, like no one had ever had a name. I left both keys on the blankness because it felt like an apology. Outside, the rain had cleaned itself into a fine mist. My car waited. The highway hum had returned to the pitch, where it talks you into believing that places are connected and you can move between them if you try. I got in, started the engine, and laughed. It sounded like choking. I pulled out without looking at the office door. I made it to the road. I didn't look in the rear view because that was a rule I understood now. Don't see what you're not supposed to survive. 10 minutes later, the wipers began to streak. I reached to the passenger seat for the napkins. From the diner I'd stopped at for a late lunch. The napkins that weren't there, instead, splayed across the seat like a person's hand, lay the brass fob. 6. I hadn't brought it. I hadn't. I drove another minute and pulled over. The ditch grass nodded in the mist like an audience that had already decided to hate the show. I picked up the fob and turned it over like it would explain itself by starting a conversation. On the back, scratched into the metal so fine it looked like a hair until you watched it longer, were 4 words. I sat very still. The engine ticked. The glove box rang once, one bright, bell-pure chime, as if a phone had lived there forever. I didn't open it. "Okay," I said, to the steering wheel, to the rain, to the thing sitting in the space where a bathroom might be, if the world were crueler than it already is. "Okay." I reached up and tilted the rear view down. The motel hallway looked back at me. Not the road, not the ditch. Fluorescent light flicker, worn carpet, a door at the end, cracked. A shadow stepped out, thin as reflection, patient. I took my hand off the mirror and sat with my palms on my thighs like a child at chapel, because if I moved, it would move faster. The figure in the mirror lifted its hand first and waved with a shy, sad little hello that made my throat hurt. Behind it, the brass 6 on the door shone so bright it looked wet. I put the car in drive and didn't check my blind spot or my heart. I let the road take me wherever a road goes, when it stops being a line and starts being the edge of something. I drove until the sky lightened from steel to ash, and then ash to the kind of grey that admits it will let you live another day if you promise to be interesting. When the sun had found a way through the clouds, I pulled into a rest area, parked between 2 trucks, and turned off the engine. I took the key fob from the passenger seat. I opened my door, walked to the trash can, and threw it in. Back in the car, I checked the mirror again. Only road this time, only sky, only me. I slept like a man who had been allowed to. When I woke, an hour later, the brass fob lay on my chest, warm, like it had been held in a hand that didn't know mine anymore. This is where you expect me to tell you I smashed it, or melted it, or took a saw to it with some ritual I found online. I tried all of that in my head. I didn't do any of it, because the message in the mirror hadn't said destroy the key. It had said, put the key back. Back where? The answer felt like letting go of the railing when you realize the stairs keep going. Back where I found it. Back where it found me. I drove back to Blue Hollow at dusk, because I guess I was born liking the flavor of a bad idea. The sign had a new hum, as if a transformer had been asked to keep a secret. Inside the office, the bell didn't ring when I pressed it. Marla looked up anyway, like bells were for other people. Gus stood behind her, arms folded, the denim of his shirt worn shiny at the elbows. "You came back," he said, not surprised, not pleased, like he'd watched a tide and was bored with its choices. "I'm returning something," I said. I set the fob on the ledger. I didn't let go. Not yet. "Do you want to tell me what happens next, or should I guess?" Gus scratched his jaw. "Doesn't matter if I tell you. It matters if you do it right." "Do what, right?" He nodded at the hall. "Don't look through the peephole. Don't speak if it does. Don't turn on the television. Don't answer the phone. Don't move the rug." I waited for. "I'm kidding." There were no jokes left. "And then?" I asked. "You leave the key on the nightstand and step outside the door," he said. "You shut it behind you. You don't lock it. You don't knock. You don't say thank you. Then you walk away. And if you hear your name," he paused. The word was heavy. "You keep walking." Marla's mouth opened, closed. She pushed the ledger toward me, and tapped the blank space by my name. "If you make it to the bell," she whispered, "ring it once, not twice." I took the key and walked down the hall. The light above room 6 flickered in the way of a thing winking without humor. The brass plate shone. The gouges had filled with the shadow of evening. The lock took the key like a throat takes air. The chain lifted itself. I didn't help. I stepped in. The smell was gone. Not fresh, but not rot. The room had been aired, or the room had been told to behave. I set the key on the nightstand and stood looking at it. Because there's always a last chance to run. In the bathroom mirror, my reflection waited, on time, with its hands flat on the sink, like it was about to push itself away. "Put what back where?" I whispered, because I am an idiot who talks to mirrors. It didn't answer. That was how I knew I was doing it right. I stepped backward. The door shut softly on its own. The chain whispered. In the hall, the air felt thinner, like a window had opened, where a wall had been pretending. I walked. I didn't run. I kept my eyes on the office door like it had a magnet in it, and my chest was full of filings. At the counter, I stopped. I put my hand on the bell. I pressed it once. I didn't look at Marla. I didn't look at Gus. I walked out into a dusk that had remembered how to be a color instead of a bruise. I got in my car. My hands shook. I laughed. I cried in the private way where you don't let your face know it's happening. On the road, the rear view showed only road. My phone buzzed with the first message I'd gotten since the night began. It was from an unknown number. The preview text read, "We're glad you put it back." I deleted it without opening. I turned off the phone. I drove. I have not stayed in a motel since. I'm not brave. I'm not a hero. I'm a person who sleeps with a towel hung over the bathroom mirror and a glass of water by the bed that I never drink because sometimes, in the night, it ripples. If you're ever tired enough to accept the wrong key because it's what's offered and it's late and all you want is a door to close, don't. If the number on the fob is scratched so deep the shine hurts your eyes, don't. If the person at the desk looks past you when they hand it over, like they're counting exits in case you try to give it back, don't. Because some rooms get lonely, some rooms grow hungry, and some rooms will keep making themselves out of whatever wall you lean against until you've given them what they're owed. And if you do accept it, if you already did, then do one kind thing for yourself before you leave. Put the key back.